So hello, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We have an extremely interactive and applied workshop prepared, and I personally am really excited to experience this content along with you. My name is Rachel Knopf-Shea, and I am the Instructional Design Lead at Women Lift Health. I'd like to acknowledge our founder and your CUGH president, Dr. Michelle Berry, who is in the audience today. And I'd like to now share about the work we at Women Lift Health are doing. So next slide, please. We work with partners around the world to accelerate the advancement of talented women into senior leadership. We invest in the capacity of mid-career women, actively working with them to expand their power and influence. But the onus for change is not on the women alone or the individual alone. We work to influence their institutional environments, and we leverage societal momentum. Women Lift Health is about action taken by women, by male allies, by organizational leaders, and by societal champions. All of these together add to transformative change at the individual, institutional, and societal levels. And you can see that written here and displayed here in our visual theory of change. Next slide, please. Our signature program, the Leadership Journey, is a highly targeted training program for mid-career women in health. Women who work across countries, cultures, sectors, and disciplines. It's built on a women's leadership framework that emphasizes authentic, inclusive, strategic, and impactful leadership. And you can see that represented here in our chart. So for example, as the women go through the first quarter of their leadership journey with Women Lift Health, they focus on discovering the parts of their identity that may have been pushed down or not yet fully unlocked professionally or even personally, or leveraged as sources of their strength and confidence. They tap into the sources of energy and resilience that fuel their leadership and prevent burnout. And they use this deeper understanding of themselves to build on the next phase of their leadership journey. Some of the content we'll share with you today overlaps with the content we use in our leadership journey. And if there are any Leadership Journey alumni in our audience, because I saw a few of them had registered, don't worry, there will be new content as well. And a lot of these lessons are the kind that bear repeating. With that in mind, this session is being recorded and will be available on the CUGH website after the conference. We recognize that this is an international audience. If there's any terminology we use that doesn't make sense for you, please just note that in the chat and we can clarify and expand upon that. Lastly, if you want to learn more about our work at Women Lift Health or want to consider applying for the 2023 US Leadership Journey or the Leadership Journeys in 2023 in India or East Africa, which includes Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda, you can follow the link we're going to add in the chat. And now I will pass it on to my, what did we say, kindred spirit, Shelley.
Yeah. Kindred spirit. So thank you so much, Rachel, for that introduction. And I'll just say that it's truly an honor for me to be here and again, touching lives across the globe. So I am a senior faculty member at the Center for Creative Leadership. And I'd just like to tell you just a little bit about what we call CCL. CCL, in fact, has its foundation in healthcare. It started when a small town pharmacist named Lunsford Richardson in Greensboro, North Carolina, had a heart to change the conditions of the society in which he served. And in the 1800s, he created a vaporizing salve, also known, and many people know it as Vicks Vapor Rub. And it really took off during the flu epidemic of 1918. Well, his son, Henry Smith Richardson Sr., took over the family business, later sold Vicks Vapor Rub to Procter & Gamble. And during his tenure, he devoted much of his time to identifying, to training, and advancing future leaders. And he started the Smith Richardson Foundation to focus on research for developing those leaders. It was through the third generation philanthropist, his son, Henry Smith Richardson Jr., that the Center for Creative Leadership was actually formed. We reach more than, as the slide says, there are some 160 countries across 4 continents. well over 80,000 leaders actually from more than 3,000 organizations each year. And we do this to engage leaders to think and act beyond the boundaries that limit their effectiveness. And so Rachel mentioned we were going to be talking about burnout and other key topics. Again, some of these items that are covered in the normal leadership journey. But for our purposes today, we're limited to 3 hours. These are the 3 areas we're going to focus on. One, when you leave, it's my hope that you're going to have a greater understanding of the 5 areas of resilience, which are physical, mental, inspirational, emotional, and social. That you will increase your ability to attain personal sustainability while managing the various contexts of your life. And the third bullet, as it says there, apply influence concepts to actual leadership situations. So what you see on the screen is a list of what we know to be some of the key issues academia is facing relative to global health. What I'd like for you to do is place a check mark or stamp next to the item that resonates most with you. But before we do that, just I want to remind some of you of how to use annotation tools. Within Zoom, you just go to the top of your screen, click on View Options, then Annotate, and then click on Stamp. And you're free to use whichever stamp you'd like. So I'd love to see some of you tell me what's most challenging for you as you look at this list. And I see Hannah is trying to put hers up there, but if you would use your stamp. So again, View Options, Annotate, Stamp. Okay, thank you, Mason. Mason said bias in grant making. Christina, free speech. Courtney, navigating workplace politics. All right, now I'm seeing the responses. Give you just kind of a moment to do that. And really kind of what my theory was that, and this is kind of shaping out this way, that there'd be a check mark in almost every spot, right? That at some level, one way or another, that we're dealing with some of these issues. So I'll give you just a few more minutes. And I'm seeing actually just only 3 that are not, well, I take that back. Only 2 that haven't been selected, and that's the limited scholarship opportunities. I was thinking someone did gender discrimination, but I'm glad to hear that that's not the most challenging one you're faced with. So I appreciate that. Ashley, would you mind clearing the screen for me of these notes? Thank you so much. Well, everything that despite which challenge you have, we all have some form of challenge. And while I asked you to mark the one that was most challenging to you, I'm sure there were likely many that you related to. So my question to you is, so what happens if none of these things change? How do we find our way despite the adversity that's in front of us? How do we go about remaining resilient? Well, that's a question I hope that I'll be able to help provide some answers to. And so to do that, I want to introduce you to this concept of burning bright. Burn bright is the natural, positive, aspirational opposite to burning out. It's a shorthand really for being present, being focused, being energetic, being engaged with yourself and with your teams. It's resilience, but it's slightly different because it does have a focus on energy. And so it's not the resilience that we sometimes define as grit and determination and perseverance, though it does support those worthy traits. One note that I want to make here is that this next hour is going to be about you and your health and finding ways to build resiliency to burn bright so that you can find ways to be more successful and apply what may appear to be simple frameworks, but frameworks that have been grounded in years of research. Okay. So it's no surprise that many of us are challenged with finding ways to burn bright. Instead, we seem to be burning out, right? That's kind of how most of us are feeling. To start, virtual meetings and trainings like this, socializing, they have made us extremely productive. And one of the things that I mentioned to one of the speakers earlier was that it's also allowed us to connect across boundaries. Sometimes we may not have even been able to connect with people in Africa or Asia or other places as easily as we do now. But virtual is exhausting. Zoom exhaustion is a real thing. You've experienced it, I've experienced it. And not to mention that we've been in this global pandemic and we are front and center in the evolution of new ways of working. We're all on the edge in different ways. And compound that with being cut off from many of the things that nurture and feed us during these so-called, our normal times. People are feeling more disconnected and lonely. And speaking on behalf of the US, we've done some studies around this. Rates of anxiety and depression have tripled since March of 2019. And I'm pretty sure this is probably true across the globe. I know personally I've felt disconnected at the end of a long day with back-to-back meetings where I've been so-called with people. But research tells us why this is the case. There is a different quality to our attention when we're online. We tend to be more hyper-focused on the few available visual cues that we get, or maybe we're totally distracted and we're checking email and text while we're supposed to be listening. We're constantly multitasking, and as a result, our brains are working overtime while we feel even less productive. And as a result, we're not truly connecting with others. So we need to think about strategic and intentional renewal, both individually and collectively. Interestingly enough, burnout is now classified as a syndrome by the World Health Organization. And this classification and burnout as a global pandemic came before COVID. So we fast forward, we think about kind of the future past that early study that was done back in August of 2020. There was a study that reported that 75% of workers had experienced burnout. And 40% of those polls said it was a direct result of the pandemic. So burnout can happen at any season of life and at any leader level. Again, we saw burnout before COVID and the pandemic, and certainly see it while we're in it. Our conversation today is very much about you, first and foremost. And we also invite you as leaders in your organization to be thinking about what you want to take away to encourage your peers and the teams that you lead. As leaders, it starts with you. Yes, individual responsibility is important, and we also need to think more broadly about how we can create and cultivate those conditions for our teams to thrive and burn bright. What comes to mind when I think about that is, when you're on a flight and the flight attendant says, put on your mask first before you try to put it on others. That's one of the things I invite you to do. What we also know is burnout can be expensive for employers. Adding up, it's been totaled about $190 billion a year in burnout-related healthcare costs, alongside of productivity and staff turnover challenges. And so organizations are taking note, and many are looking to implement programs to address burnout. And so, yeah, it is great that our organizations are tackling burnout at some level. But I would say me and you, we can't wait for that. In the meantime, we have to be responsible for recharging ourselves and getting energized. You are in control of the impact of your energy and focus, and just plain feeling better for you and for those that are around you. So, when I think about my own personal journey of trying to climb the corporate ladder to success, I think about my attempts to work harder, put in longer hours, accepting additional assignments, all in order to be recognized so that one day I could enjoy the toils of my labor. Only to recognize that if I don't take steps today regarding my health, then guess what? I may not make it to the place of enjoying all that I've worked for. So I've had to find new ways of staying balanced and healthy so that I can be effective as a leader. And this means that I take notice of how my body may be responding to stress, making sure I put in enough hours of restful sleep and quality sleep, I might add, practicing my yoga on a regular basis, connecting with others, and just giving myself time to reflect on the things that are going on around me. So, what about you? How are you when you're at your best? And what I mean by that is you're in the zone. I'm curious to know what words come to mind for you. And if you wouldn't mind putting some of those words in the chat, I'd like to see what you have to say. So when you're burning bright, you're feeling good, you're in the zone, what words come to mind for you? And I'm going to be checking the chat just to see what flow. Thank you, Courtney. Motivated, peace, love, creative, productive, energized, inspired, positive, full of life. Oh, I love that one. Timeless, inspired, engaged, inquisitive, nice, connected, alive. So lots of great responses there. Just reading some of those words has a certain element of contagion in it. There's energy and there's also this calm and contentedness. Well, we should feel proud of what we're accomplishing, and maybe we even feel happy at times. I didn't see happy as a word, but I'm sure there's some that would say they're happy or joyful. One thing we know is when people report that they're happy, guess what else they are? People are happy, they're also engaged. They're innovative. I like that. Someone said inquisitive. They're emotionally regulated. So it is their best self showing up. So our conversation today is about how we spend more time in this place, in this best self, okay? Embodying the words that you typed in the chat for me. And intention is the goal here, not perfection. And bringing our best selves more frequently to really all parts of our lives. So take a look at this quote. I love this quote that you see on the screen there. An empty lantern provides no light. Self-care is a fuel that allows your light to shine brightly. When approaching a burnout phase, that ability to learn and flex and engage in new leadership habits completely evaporates. So our core message around mindset is this: that resilience or burning bright is about how you recharge, not how you endure. It's about being intentional about that recharge. It's about finding ways to recharge through routines or rituals that you set up that help to give you that energy. Unfortunately, many of us have in our minds this myth about productivity, and I'm sure and confident that all of you know hard work equals results. But what science is telling us is that hard work plus short breaks equals quicker results, better results, and a better you. And this may seem counterintuitive at first because if you're resting, you're not working. And therefore, you're taking time away from achieving your goals and serving your customers. However, the science is conclusive that taking short breaks to rest and recharge actually increases your productivity, perform at a level that's much better. You're more intentional after recovery. And recovery can be short but meaningful. And that's really motivating to me. So greater productivity through intentional recharging. One thing that I've come to enjoy while working from home is taking a nap. And I can't tell you how restorative that has been for me. It might be 15 minutes or it might be 30 minutes, but just that small amount of time allows me to get re energized with my work with greater vigor as well as with perspective. So, I would like to know if you would be willing to dedicate 2% of each day, which is basically 12 minutes twice a day, to recharge yourself like your smartphone. If so, then what I want you to do is to use your reaction button and give me a thumbs up. Tell me, yes, Shelly, I'm willing to put 2% of my time away in order to, you can do thumbs up or you can put on the screen. I see some responses on the screen as well. I don't see a lot though. I'd like to see more. Okay, thank you, Judith. Judith put a heart and Wendy is clapping. So all of that works for me. Because when you do that, you can significantly enhance your energy, your focus, your well-being, and you can bring that best self that we talked about a little earlier. And Burn Bright really does help you to, tap into all of the elements of your life. Okay? So there are essentially 5 broad areas in which we as humans find energy. They're physical, mental, inspirational, emotional, and social. And so we're going to use the remainder of our time looking at what we can do in these 5 areas to build our energy and to avoid burnout. All right, so for some of you, when you look at this screen here, these are various tactics. I'd love for you to indicate on the screen which of these tactics do you actually do now? Because I realize that some of you are coming and you know how to burn bright, but I'm curious to know which tactics. If you would again do the annotate, if you would go to view options, annotate and stamp, just kind of tell me, what are some of the things that you do now? Seeing a lot of great responses, and I'm glad to see that we are doing some of these, and not just some, but a lot of them. A lot in the physical I'm seeing. Some in the social. Actually, it's nice to see that we're actually across the board. So this is music to my ear, beautiful to see. And the truth of the matter is there's no right way that works for everyone. Everyone is different, just as we're seeing here on the screen. What I want to do is encourage you to try some new things and then continue to practice what you know works best for you. So again, there's a lot on the screen, and we're going to give you, during our time together, just a sample across the 5 different domains. It'll be a refresher for some, new for others. Again, some of you may already be doing some of these as you've indicated here. And so what I would say is, if it's something new, give it a try. Okay, give it a try. Ashley, would you clear the screen for me? This is a beautiful screen, though. I actually wish I could keep it up there. All right, so we're going to start our focus on the physical. Now, movement is often overlooked, but just 12 minutes can improve your mood. Here we're talking about movement, not exercise, so make note of that. Movement in our day is so important, and it doesn't have to be that much. Even just one opportunity to move in the course of the day for as little as, again, 12 minutes can significantly improve your mood, your perspective taking, your empathy, your emotional regulation, as well as your ability to consistently bring your best self. And it's also helpful to think about movement versus exercise, because when we think about movement, we think about, oh God, I need 30 minutes or 40 minutes or 60 minutes, plus I've got to shower, change my clothes, and then our lazy brain convinces us not to do it. Instead, finding short bursts of time to get out and move, it's going to be a lot easier to do, to reframe in these small chunks than exercise might be. As a matter of fact, I want everyone now to come on camera. I want to see everybody, so turn your video on. And without music, I want you to pretend that you're listening to your favorite upbeat song. And guess what? We're going to dance. So when everyone dancing around, woo, yeah. All right. Woohoo. All right, get that move on. Guess what? You just did movement. You just did movement. It breaks up your day, right? I want you to find those small bursts of energy throughout your day to get your movement in, okay? I hope you promise to do that. All right, so add it not only to kind of like doing the movements, what's also nice, we found really kind of some studies that just even 5 minutes of green exercise, it also has an impact on our mood, our focus, our self-control, and helps to decrease stress. Time in natural settings also decreases rumination, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. And that's the process of continuously thinking about the same thing. And even if you can't go outside, just looking at a scene of nature, hearing nature, sound prompts, they get our brain to think differently. And we can even do that on our computers by looking at rolling brooks or ocean waves. I do that oftentimes. I also, here's another trick that I do, is I'll put on ambient music with the video. And you can find those on YouTube. Just search ambient music, and usually it has pictures of nature. So these are things that you can bring with you into that virtual space. Well, also in the physical space is sleep, which is hugely important. And the science is more and more clear on the importance of it. Sleep matters to mental, physical, and our emotional health. And people just feel better and function better when they get adequate sleep. And the beauty of sleep is that it's portable and it's free, right? And we all know how to do that, right? You don't need any special gear. What we also know is when you're lacking sleep, no surprise, then you're distant from your best self. And lack of sleep massively contributes to the onset of burnout, which is what we're trying to avoid. So I want you to be honest with me. I'm going to ask Ashley to put up a poll, and I'd like you to answer this question. How many hours of sleep do you tend to get each night? So if you look at the poll, let's see what the results say. And so far I'm seeing really good numbers by the majority. I want to see what this looks like at the end. But I'm seeing really, really good numbers. All right, still rolling in. Okay, we've got about almost 75%. If you could go on and weigh in, that would be great. So the nice thing that I'm seeing here is at least over 50% of you are at least getting 6 hours of sleep or more. So let's show the results if you would. Okay, great. So you'll see there over 50%, actually 67%, our final number here, get 6 or more hours of sleep. So that's really good. But that tells me that there's about 40% of you that are not getting really kind of the sleep that you need. So it really begs the question, you know, how much sleep is enough? So we actually asked a sleep scientist this question, and her response was this. She said that the average person in the general population needs between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. And there are some people who need very little sleep, but they're rare. It's only about 3% of the population that really can survive on that amount of sleep or less without risking some cognitive impairment. And yet, CCL did its own research on leaders' sleep habits, which showed that 42% of the leaders were trying to get by on around 6 hours of sleep. When we asked them how much they actually needed to feel rested, they said about 7.5 hours of sleep. And some even said like 50% they need 8 or more hours. But nearly two-thirds of those leaders reported that there's a gap between the sleep that they need and the sleep that they get. And this is what we call sleep debt, because it is that amount of sleep that is owed in order to perform at your best. And you also don't get better at having less sleep, as some people might think. Your capacity just doesn't adjust. You just become less aware when you mess up. That's kind of what it is. So one of the enemies of good sleep is rumination. I brought this term up a little earlier. And it's simply that repetitively going over a thought or a problem without completion. And it tends to be a focus on the negative than the positive as well. Think about times in your life when you were very stressed about something, and you might have noticed how much you were ruminating. You may not have known it was called rumination, but you were ruminating. Maybe you were lying down in bed at night, and you started thinking about it, ruminating, and had a hard time even getting to sleep. So thinking about it over and over prevented you to have from that deep restorative sleep that you need. So what can you do about rumination? Here are some steps that you might want to employ. And then I'm also going to share with you a trick that I use, and we're going to practice it here in a second as well. The first thing, and this might sound counterintuitive, but it's saying to wake up and stay awake as long as you can. And when you do this, you'll notice something very interesting happening, that you actually can't stay awake very long. Most people can't last 30 seconds in the present. So staying in the present. Just try to notice how often you're in that state. You know, people tend to spend about 70% of their day in what we call waking sleep. They're not fully present. So I'm saying get fully present, because if you allow yourself to keep thinking. So let me give you one of my tricks that I do. And it actually it ties into the second step, which is about intentionally deciding to refocus. You can refocus on things you can control. But one of the things I do to get out of rumination is I tend to focus on my breathing. Now you might say, what do you mean, Shelley? So I'm thinking about all this stuff. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got to do this conference tomorrow. Do I have everything? Do I have everything kind of memorized? Do I know exactly what I'm going to say? Do I have all my breakouts in order? And so I'm thinking. I'm like, Shelley, you're not going to get the sleep you need. So I started focusing on listening for my breath. And not only do I listen for my breath, I actually pay attention to the rising of my chest cavity, and I'm lying there, and when my mind may want to go off somewhere else, I come back to listen to your breath, listen to your breath, listen to your breath, and miraculously, before I know it, I am back asleep. Another thing you can do is put things in perspective. You know, if you're still thinking about something, you say, really, what is it that I can do about that today? Like nothing, or right at this moment. And if it's something you just have to work on, it might be better to get up and do it and then come back to bed. But decide, you know, what can I put this in perspective relative to the things I have to do. And then just make the decision to let go of whatever is stealing your attention. Of course, this is easier said than done, but we do know that it takes practice. And I'm telling you, try that breathing exercise. It may not work for you the first night. You keep trying, practicing, and you'll be falling asleep like I do just about every night. So what you see here are some quick tips on sleep. Actually, in your workbook, what I provided for you there, I've got tips on all these different categories, so you can refer back to your workbook for that. But just highlighting a couple of things, try to get a regular sleep schedule. If you're like me, I've got a Fitbit. It helps me in a number of ways. It helps me with movement. So every hour I try to get in 250 steps, and it vibrates on me to let me know if I haven't gotten those in at 10 minutes before the hour. So it's a reminder. but I also have my sleep schedule program. So I have a program to say, Shelly, you should be asleep by 9 o'clock. At 8:45, I get a warning, hey, it's time to wind down. So try to get a regular sleep schedule and do what you can to get prompts to help you. Um, just try to even get, some of you said not as many get more than 7 hours. We said 7 to 9 is ideal, but just try to get at least another 12 to 24 more minutes kind of every night. Okay. If you don't already, create a cold and dark space. So turn off those lights. You know, one of the things I do is I put tape over some of the green lights, because we have an air purifier, which creates white noise that helps us to go to sleep. We like keeping our ceiling fan on in the evening, so it keeps it cool. So find those ways that you can be cool and make sure it's dark. And try to unplug from the phone, the iPad, those other devices at least 15 minutes before you're trying to go to sleep. One thing that my husband and I decided to do, we started going to bed early. We started going to bed instead of 8:45, 8:30, or 8 o'clock, because we started reading before going to bed. And funny thing is, my husband was reading this series and he was so anxious to get to the next chapter. You know, it's like 7:30. He's like, I think I'm going to bed. Like, you're going to bed? Really, he wanted to be in bed so he could read. So, hey, here's a great habit that you can pick up, right? Try to control alcohol and caffeine just in general, but definitely I think the prescribed recommendation is like no more than 3 hours or no later than 3 hours, after you're about to go to sleep. So stop consuming 3 hours before you go into bed. And then be like me, use those short naps, because I admit to being a napper and I'm proud about it. All right, so we talked about physical. In the mental domain, we're going to look at mindfulness. And I know that, we hear this term a lot these days, but what is mindfulness? Mindfulness really is a state of presence and focus. It's something that we've all experienced. It's not this magical state of being. Really, it's very natural to live our life mindfully, right? And that's a part of being present. And the more you practice it, the more accessible the skill is. And we all have this innate ability to be present and thoughtful as we face challenges in our busy lives. But mindfulness is about paying full attention to what you're doing and not being on autopilot. And so that really becomes the foundation of mindfulness. Some even see mindfulness as really this basic human ability to be fully present, to be aware of where you are, what you're doing, not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. Because truly, we spend too much time thinking about the future or the past and not enough time in the present. What science tells us is that we spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about that past or future, what someone said, what happened at the meeting last week, how stressful the weekend of family activities were with our in-laws, wondering how much longer we have to deal with COVID, and on and on and on. We spend time thinking about the past or the future when what we really should be doing is looking at the here and the now. And the science behind mindfulness is remarkable in terms of the impact of engaging in some type of regular mindfulness practice. Some of the things that we've found is that if you practice just as little as 12 minutes a day, it can improve your mental health. It can improve our physical health. It can improve our performance that's associated with memory. And I don't know about you all, but I can always use more help with memory. Our emotional regulation, perspective taking, as well as our attention. And actually slows down the aging process. Now, I'm all for that. And I think that in itself is pretty motivating. Here you see on the screen just a few mindfulness apps to help you regain that ability. I like Calm. It works really well. But whichever one kind of works for you if you want something to help you. My Fitbit now, I'm not really getting any commission from Fitbit, although you'll find me referring to it a lot. They also now have a mindfulness, some practices. You could do breathing, you could do all kinds of things with your Fitbit app now. So anyway, if I was getting a cut, I'd tell you, but I'm not. All right, so now that you know how big of a difference it can make, I want to know, are you ready to try it? Is everyone ready to try it? I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and if you want, you can put me on the speaker view if that helps you. So this is what we're going to do. The first thing I want you to do is I just want you to, we're going to stand up and shake it out first, okay? Because we've got too much stuff going on. So I just want you to shake it out. So stand up, shake it out, okay? Just shake it out a little bit, get ourselves ready. And then just, I want you to hang down just like a little rag doll. Just lay there, just fold over. And then I want you to return back to your seats. Because again, we got to get the blood flowing every now and then, even though we had our disco dancing. I want you to practice that. All right, next thing I want you to do is I want you to sit comfortably in your chair. Put your feet flat, put your arms by your side, whatever is comfortable. And I want you to either close your eyes or lower your gaze, whichever you feel most comfortable with. And first thing I want you to do is I want you to do what I do, and I want you to listen for your breath. I want you to notice the rise and fall of your chest cavity. And I want us to practice two different breathing techniques while we're still eyes closed, gaze lowered. I'm going to show you, and then we're going to practice together. We're going to do 3 breaths in and out of our nose, but when we exhale, I want you to extend it. So it'll be something like this. You're going to inhale through your nose, hold, and a long exhalation through your nose. It's almost like you're emptying your chest cavity. All right, join me. Inhale, hold, long exhale. Inhale, hold, and exhale. One last one. Inhale, hold, and exhale. So this one you can do at any time. When I feel anxiety or stress, that's a really good one for me. But here's another one, another variation on breathing. Still eyes closed or gaze lowered. This time we're going to inhale through our nose, but we're going to exhale through our mouth. And we're going to make a loud sound, okay? So it's going to go like this. You're going to inhale through your nose, hold, and exhale. Like you're blowing out all the air. So join me this time. Inhale, hold, long exhale. Inhale, hold, and exhale. One last one. Inhale, hold, and exhale. I guarantee you when you do that, you can't be anywhere but where you are. So it helps you to refocus. I want you to wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers, and then you can open your eyes. All right. You are now deserving of, we're going to go through one more thing, and then I'm going to make sure that you get a break. So let's go back to the screen. We're going to talk a little bit now about inspiration. And let me just kind of get a check here on my time. I want to make sure that I am right on point. Okay. All right. So let's go through this and then we're going to move on because I want to give you some time to go into a breakout as well. So this next category is on inspiration. This is a recharge bucket that really includes thinking about your purpose, your meaning at work, your spiritual recharge. It could be your traditions or your religious practices. It's about seeking and finding meaning and purpose and connecting with something much larger than yourself. I love this quote by Viktor Frankl that says, in times of crisis, people reach for meaning. Meaning is strength. Our survival depends on our seeing and finding it. So again, try to find meaning in whatever ways that best works for you, okay? The next one is around emotion. Now, this one can hit hard on the fact that the brain is highly emotional and social in its orientation and focus. Far more than it being rational, probably more than any of us ever thought. And our brains are wired for survival and for the social. And so we're going to talk about a practice that you may not have heard about called savoring. And so savoring is similar to mindfulness and this idea of gratitude. It's kind of two wrapped in one, and it's about appreciating moments a little bit more and being intentional about that. So just for a second, I want you to think back over the past week. What happened during that time that brought you extra joy, exceptional joy? Just take a moment and think about it. What happened during the week that really brought you joy? Usually what happens to me, for me, I had both a sad time and a happy time. Sad, my mother's eldest sister passed away, and so we had her service last week. That brought sadness, but the joy was I got to see so many family members. So as I was thinking about the weekend, just brought a smile to my face, and I just started thinking about those exchanges. That's savoring. It's thinking about it and being intentional. It's recognizing those happy moments in our life. All right, the last recharge is social. And as I mentioned, our brains are wired for survival, to be very attentive to threats, alert us at all times. And our brains are also wired for the social. We're designed to be highly attentive to social environments in which we find ourselves. That's how we thrive. And we can more easily survive and thrive in groups and not just kind of as a loner. And this has nothing to do with you having an extroverted or introverted personality. Early 21st century brain science is very clear on this point. They said that this is a fundamental part of who we are and how our brains are. We all need social connections at some level to truly and fully burn bright. All right, so what I'd like to know in the chat, I'm curious to see, how are you connecting with others socially in the virtual world? What are some best practices? So we're just going to take a couple, but what are some best practices? And I'll certainly share one that I do. And the one that I do is I do a monthly, and this is actually with a colleague, I'll do a monthly connect on Zoom, 30 minutes just to connect. I'm connecting now with a young lady that I met 2 years ago that was in one of my sessions. She's now actually in Kenya. She was in Switzerland. And so we're able to connect that way. So others, I don't see anything in the chat yet. Give me one or two examples of the kinds of things you're doing to connect. Let me see if you can share one or two. Someone has, I give my example of doing kind of a Zoom Connect. I've seen some, Zoom happy hours, some Zoom parties. I'm not seeing, okay, there we go. Monthly non-work social catch-ups, nice. WhatsApp, that's nice. All right, some good examples of some of the things. We just have to be mindful. We've got to think about, we have to be more intentional, really kind of about doing that. All right, let me get back here to my slides. So just as it says here, flourishing is not a solo endeavor. We really do need each other in order to really be successful. Another Burn Bright trick or practice that works really well is this whole idea around gratitude. Gratitude is actually a tactic. And here we go. You can put it in the emotional category, you can put it in the social category. Regardless of which bucket you put it in, it can enhance our positivity and our overall well-being. And it also creates kind of this enhanced connectedness between people. And so we know the importance of that social connection. So here's a practice. I want us to do this. Get your phones out. And I want you to think of someone you need to send a gratitude note to. So get your phones. I want you to send a gratitude note. And then once you do that, I want you to really think about how you feel, okay, after sending it. So I'm going to send my gratitude. I want everyone to do the same thing, okay? So send your gratitude note. All right. Something simple, doesn't have to be, just you could just say, hey, I appreciated that you made breakfast for me this morning, or I appreciate what you did for me yesterday, whatever it might be, just a simple note. Now, don't be surprised. You get someone who reaches back out, whoever you sent the gratitude note to, and it tells you, hey, we would like, what's going on? They might, if they haven't heard gratitude from you in a long time, is everything okay? That means that's a message that you need to do more gratitude, okay? I did see a comment about wanting copies of my slide. We actually don't share the slides, but what I've done for you is in your workbook, which if you have it, if you didn't download it, I asked Ashley again to put it in the chat for you. All of the key principles that I'm going over is in that workbook. So it's about, oh my gosh, 33 pages long. So use the workbook, but we don't share our slides, but the workbook is definitely there for you. All right, so in the workbook, you're actually going to see some of these examples of things you can do to improve social, take some social breaks, which I saw a few of you listed in the chat. Do virtual lunches, be more mindful of kind of the dynamics, between you and coworkers, maybe ask for advice, be obsessed, as it says there, about the people in your life who really matter the most to you. And then, another little nice trick here is to be able to keep a gratitude journal. I have one, and man, when you're having those days where it doesn't feel like things are going quite well or right, here's your opportunity to go through the gratitude journal. So when we started this session, I showed you this list of tactics very, very quickly. Put a check mark on the ones now that you're going to try out. So I asked you what you're doing. Now I want a check mark. Just tell me real quickly what might you try out, okay? What might you try out? Let me see if we get as many on the screen as we did in the beginning. But I need you to do this a little quickly. So again, go view options, annotate, stamp, just to get an idea. So I'm glad to see that some of you are going to try some new tactics now that we've kind of talked about it. All right, so Ashley, if you would clear the screen for me, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send you into a breakout, and I'm going to give you just about, and it's not going to be a long time. I want you to think about these questions here, and or fill out the statement, complete the statement. And I'm giving you just about 5 minutes. Okay, so Ashley, if you would give them 5 minutes, send them in the breakout, and you can just pick one or two of these things that you'd like to answer. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. It's been put in the chat because this is not in your workbook. Or you can take a picture if you want to do that very quickly, but it's in the chat and it'll be in the chat when you actually go. So give them 5 minutes and then we'll come back and I'd like to maybe hear what a couple of you came up with. All right, so 5 minutes in the breakout.
Should we pause recording right now? I think it's Kev who's doing that.
Shelley, did you see Christina's message about the slides and the workbook?
No, I haven't been watching that closely. So I know someone asked a question about the slides, and I did let them know that the slides
Yeah.
will not be available. But I said that no, the slides are not in the workbook, but the principles that I've shared are in the workbook.
Yeah, I think we're just going to have to emphasize that. And we'll say that in our response, that it's not exactly the same, but the principles are the same.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Is anyone having trouble joining a breakout room? I see there's a few folks who've been assigned who haven't joined the rooms. Maybe they've stepped away.
Yeah.
Yeah, is my guess. Yeah.
Everyone has at least one other person in their group, so we are good.
Great.
So what I'm going to do, so I'm about 5 minutes behind. So at the last practice, which I had put aside for 15 minutes, will be 10 minutes. So we'll recover some time there because I definitely want to give them their 10-minute break because this was kind of a long run.
Hi, Shireen.
Hi, Michelle.
I'm with
How
my
are you?
newborn. I'm with my newborn.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, let me, I'll show you the video.
yeah.
Newborn.
Her newborn grandson.
Oh,
Oh, so cute.
He's like 3 days old.
Oh, adorable.
Oh.
He still has no name.
Oh.
Well, is there a deadline for name, Michelle? I forget what
10
it
days.
is.
They have 10 days.
10 days.
And we've gone through the alphabet several times.
That's a resilience builder right there. Looking at the little one.
That'll be an icebreaker question for him. He'll go, I didn't have a name for the first 10 days.
Well, their other child not only didn't have a name for 10 days, they changed it after 10 days.
oh my gosh.
You're allowed to do for 3 more days.
What's the name? The other one.
Oh, Gideon.
Nice.
Shelley, you did a nice job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
I was the one who referred people to CCL.
Yep.
Oh, really? Thank you.
I don't know if you know Chris Musselwhite. Do you know Chris?
I don't.
Oh, he retired from CCL.
Okay.
He was one of the founders. So
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that.
yeah. It's been a great fit for Women Lift.
Yes, I'm so glad that Michelle introduced us, and I mean, it was the best choice that we made early on.
Nice. Well, we
Yeah.
love partnering with you all. It brings us great joy for sure.
And now, you're doing the partnering overseas too? Some of it?
All
Or
of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with the Geo Hub people, right?
Yes, exactly. So
With
we have
Mhm.
lead facilitators in India and East Africa that are also from CCL. And
Mhm.
then we're working in partnership with CCL locally to find additional independent contractors that we could take on as trainers that could potentially work with both Rumination and CCL. Yeah.
Great.
Once they're ramped up with the content.
How are you doing with those cohorts?
Well, India is getting really close to being announced, and East Africa, we sent out all the acceptances, so we're just waiting for everyone to make sign off on the commitment, so we can make public
Congratulations.
announcements.
Mazel
Thank you.
tov. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, it's looking great.
That's a lot of
Breakouts
work.
are closing. Okay.
Mhm.
Heads up, everyone will be back in about 30 seconds.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have everyone back now? There they come. Here they come. Here they come. All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm hoping that you enjoyed that experience. You didn't have a lot of time, certainly. But I hope you had a chance to connect with someone else and hear about what they're going to do differently, what they're going to commit to. Because I believe in taking breaks, I'm going to give you a much needed 10-minute break. So I'll put the clock up, or you can check your time. But take 10 minutes, get up, stretch, get something to refresh, something to drink or nibble on or what have you. But we'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay. Right. So I hope you took that break and you got up and walked around again. Took the time to get the blood flowing. So now that we really have kind of some foundation, some tactics for recharging ourselves so we can burn bright and we don't burn out, I want to introduce you to some better ways, perhaps maybe for you to think about how to best manage your time and your priorities, because I know that there are many. I want to introduce maybe to some, maybe not to others, what's called the Eisenhower Matrix, named after U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower. Some of you may know this as the Urgent Important Matrix. That's actually how I was introduced to it. Well, President Eisenhower used this when he served as a general in the U.S. Army. And I truly believe that this tool can help you to decide how to prioritize your tasks based on urgency and importance. So to do that, what I'm going to do is there's a great little film clip that I found on YouTube. It does the trick perfectly. So we're going to take a listen to watch the video. Okay, let's take a listen.
Have you recently had the feeling there is more to do than you can achieve in a day, a week, or even a month? A good time management strategy solves this problem and can dramatically reduce stress and...
I do that every time I'm trying to go off video and I stop the video.
At the same time. The Eisenhower Matrix by former US President Eisenhower supports you in prioritizing tasks by urgency and importance, and sorting out those less urgent or important tasks which you shouldn't do yourself. This results in 4 quadrants with different work strategies. We call the first quadrant the Do First sector, as its tasks are important for your life and career and need to be done today or tomorrow at the latest. You could use a timer to help you concentrate while trying to get as much of them done as possible. An example of a number 1 task could be a review of an important document for your manager. The second quadrant we call the Schedule sector, as its tasks are important but less urgent, and you should list those things that you need to put in your calendar here. An example of that could be a long-planned return to the gym. The third quadrant takes up things you could delegate, as they are less important to you than others, but still pretty urgent. You should keep track of delegated tasks by email, telephone, or within a meeting to check back on their progress later. An example of a delegation could be somebody calling you and asking for an urgent favour or requesting you step into a meeting. Maybe you could delegate this responsibility by suggesting a better person for the job, or give the necessary information back to the caller and have him deal with the matter himself. The fourth and last quadrant is there to help you sort out and eliminate the things that you really shouldn't do at all. Discover and stop bad habits like surfing the internet without a reason, or other forms of procrastination like gaming too long, just to find an excuse for not being able to deal with important tasks in the first and second quadrant. And that's it. Give it a try yourself, or head on over to eisenhower.me for more information. And don't forget, as Dwight Eisenhower once said, what's important is seldom urgent, and what's urgent is seldom important.
All right. All right, so he said, let's give it a practice, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So in your workbook on page 12, if you could find that in page 12, I'm going to give you some time to actually think about your task, that you have to do over the course of, let's say, the next week or 30 days, if you want to do big ticket items. And I want you to try to put them in these categories. On page 13 are some more samples of kinds of things that would go into each of the categories. And so, Ashley, what I'm going to do is let's go on and put them in their breakout groups now. Give them 15 minutes. And then just take time to make as many lists as you can. And then once you do that, then I want you to kind of share out any insights or learnings that you got just by taking the time to do that exercise. So Ashley, if you would go on and put them in their breakouts, 15 minutes. Again, remember, you do your list first. And then after you do that, again, you're not going to have to have a chance to do it all. This is a tool. I hope that after today, you're going to use it going forward. So Ashley, would you send them away for 15 minutes? All right, wonderful, wonderful. So, I don't have time to check in with every single breakout, but I tell you, I've delivered this session on this particular topic many times over, different disciplines. And, repeatedly what I hear people saying is that, wow, I'm doing everything. I'm doing everything. And, this sense that everything is urgent. We tend to say everything is important, everything is urgent, and we're not doing the time or doing what's necessary to really take advantage of the other areas. I believe it was Courtney that asked the question, what does action to bias mean? And it's this idea that we have a sense to do something. We have a bias towards doing something instead of scheduling something, instead of processing and thinking about something, instead of delegating. We have this bias towards doing, and maybe a better word instead of bias to action, maybe bias to doing. That's really kind of what that means. And so if you recall from the matrix, the 4 matrix that you just went over, there was the one called delegating. And not only do we need to understand the importance of delegation in order to better manage our time and priorities, but it's also necessary that we use it as a tool so we can empower those that work with us and work for us, so that we can more effectively work in kind of this agile environment. So it's a necessity. It's not just getting it off your plate. It's a necessity. And so if you are like me, oftentimes you find yourself in this dilemma, like this lady is saying here, trying to figure out which tasks do I delegate, which do I do myself. And I'll just tell you, benefits to delegating. One, it frees up your time and, you can divert it to other places. It, believe it or not, can create trust amongst those that you delegate to, because it's like you're trusting them to get the job done. It also enables others to develop, and it provides this individual autonomy for them to be able to accomplish a mission or goal, thus increasing just overall innovation and communication and creativity and collaboration. And then lastly, it also enables greater productivity through a shared workload. So this is a box that you probably didn't have a lot of things in that you might want to look at and see the benefits of doing that. So what I'm going to do in your workbook on page 14 is the delegation scorecard. I want you to actually kind of evaluate yourself. What things are you doing or not doing? And I'm going to ask Ashley to put you back into breakouts. I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Like the last activity, take a few minutes, do an assessment of yourself, and then talk about what you discovered, okay? What insights did you get as a result of that? So Ashley, if you would put them back in for 10 minutes just to do those two tasks, and then we'll come back. Okay, I think we have just about everyone back. So I hope that you found that breakout insightful. Swati mentioned in the chat that she loves breakouts, and I especially like breakouts because it feeds us in three ways. One, you did your delegation scorecard, and so you gain greater self-awareness, but now you get to connect with someone mentally, socially, and emotionally. You know, mentally, you get to bounce off your ideas. Hey, this is kind of what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? Socially, you get to connect. You realize I'm not in this on my own, right? There are other people, that camaraderie, that there's others that might be struggling with some of the same kinds of things. So you get that emotional piece. So emotional, mental, challenging you, and giving you insight, and then connecting, you know, kind of socially. So I want us to move on now to the next section, which is really kind of talking about what stands in our way. You know, what are some of the barriers to delegation? Because change starts with awareness. So if you know kind of this is what stands in my way, you're in a better position to then be able to do something different. So on the screen, and this is also in your workbook, pages 16 and 17, these are the four major barriers that stand in our way, preventing us from delegating work to others. The first one is this fear of failure. You know, we fear that if we delegate to others and it's not done just right, then we will fail or the person will fail. You know, then there is this whole balancing act of knowing just how much autonomy to give to others versus how much control we need to maintain. That stands in the way of us deciding what to delegate. Then there's this notion that, you know, well, I'm just really not sure that I know how to delegate. And believe it or not, this stands in the way for a lot of people. Lastly, we have this tendency of getting sucked into doing everything. So going back to the bias to action, doing, we have a problem saying no. We've become kind of the yes person, and we believe that, you know, we have to do it all. And I was guilty of that. I mean, I think probably if I asked others of you who's guilty of kind of being the yes person, there was one of my managers told me once, he said, Shelley, he said, you're kind of known around the center as saying yes to everything. And I thought, really? You know, I don't think I say yes to everything. So he said, I want you, when the next thing comes around, just say no. I said, okay, I'm going to just say no just for the sake of it. I would say no so we can change this. Well, the minute I said no, they ran back to my manager. Oh my God, Shelley said no. I need her to do it. You know, oh my God, I thought I was always saying yes. You said I can't say no. But we do fall into this trap. I want to use your annotation tools again. Given the descriptions of the four that I just gave, put a check mark on the screen. Which barrier do you think gets in your way the most? I'm curious to know which one. Is it fear of failure? Is it autonomy versus control? Is it, you know, I'm just not even sure how to delegate? or you get sucked in just saying kind of yes to everything. So let's see where we all fall, okay, on the 4. I'm seeing a few more in getting sucked in. So I'd love for everyone to weigh in if you can. Again, view options, annotate, and stamp will get you what you need to annotate. So I am seeing really kind of a lot of that getting sucked in, and it helps to reinforce this idea that, you know, we don't have an easy way of saying no. While that's continuing, I'll just give you something. I've learned how to say no. I've learned how to say yes in a different way. Or maybe I could say I've learned to say no in a different way. So if someone were to say, well, can you do this report for me by Friday? Then I might say, well, I can do the report for you, but I can give it to you on Tuesday. So I literally said no to what they said, but I answered yes, right? But it was in a way that, you know, worked for me. And could that work for them? Okay, great, wonderful. But, you know, just there are ways that we can get around that. So it does look, certainly there are check marks in every one, but the biggest one clearly looks to be getting sucked in. Ashley, would you clear the screen for me? If you don't mind, because now I'm going to give you a 5-minute break. This break is called a 1-function break, meaning you can do one function, get something to drink, get something to eat, or go to the restroom. But 5 minutes, we'll see you back here shortly, okay? I'll put the timer back up, and 5 minutes, we'll see you back. All right. Okay, so I want to introduce you to what we call the delegation cycle. And as you can see, there are 4 parts to it. I'm going to actually go through each of the parts. And at the center of all of these pieces that are connected is you. And what surrounds you are these elements of being able to balance authority and trust. At the foundational level, you are the one who has to decide what to delegate and who to delegate to and how you're going to delegate. And when you do this and you do it well, then this again promotes trust, provides others with a sense of authority over the work in which they do. So let me go through each of the 4 quadrants. So the first one is around, it's about your preferences. As leaders, it's important for you to know your preferences for delegation. It's also important for you to know what stands in your way. So that's why I asked you to think about, you know, the barriers that stand in your way. Be more self-aware. So in your workbook, actually on page 20, you're going to see this questionnaire. And I'm providing it to you as homework. We will not have time to go and complete this, but I want you to do this at a time when you have some thinking time, where you're going to really list out what are your preferences. So it's important for you to know your preferences because that's the place in which we lead from. Right? So it's about knowing yourself. What are the kinds of jobs and things you like to do? Because if you know those are the things you like to do, you're probably not going to delegate it out. What things don't you like to do? So it's important for you to know that. So put this down. This is kind of your homework after the session. Not only now do we need to know ourselves, but we also need to understand those that are on our teams and those that we work with. And we've got to know what resources they need in order to accomplish the task that we're delegating to them. And so in your workbook on page 22, here's yet another resource for you. Again, we won't go through that here, but what it is a list of questions that you can ask members of your team, you know, to better understand what their interests are. Maybe what they're not doing, but what they would like to do. So again, something for you to work on afterwards, but a resource. So you need to understand yourself. You need to understand others. Now you can figure out what you want to delegate and what someone else may want to do. The third element to the delegation cycle is the task. So this is where we are crystal clear about the task by defining it and determining what exactly is required to complete it. And it's also helpful if you provide team members with the purpose for the task. So don't do one of those, don't do it because I told you to do it, but if you think about yourself, if someone asks you to do something, sometimes you kind of want to know why. So make sure you're clear about the purpose for why you're asking them to do it. And recognize that responsibility of defining the task and the details regarding the task, they are yours. For some reason, we think that people are mind readers, and then we wonder why they fail at task. It's because we don't give them the direction and the details that they need in order to get the job done. And then on page 24, this is a list of responsibilities and accountability tasks, along with some questions you should be asking yourself. This is where you're going to make sure you know what you're going to be responsible for and what's going to be the responsibility of the other person. So we're crystal clear. There's no, and you may want to include kind of check-in points. When are we going to communicate to see how things are progressing? But this is where you're clearly identifying those responsibilities and accountabilities. And then lastly, the fourth quadrant is what we call the assess and reward. And that really should go along with any task that you're delegating. And this, you might reward someone or just say thank you for the great job they did. You might do that one-on-one, or you might share it in the larger group. The key here is know the person and what they like or how they like to be rewarded. Some people like to be rewarded one-on-one, then do it one-on-one. Some people like to be, shared, more publicly. Well, then do it publicly, okay? And this is how you can really make it personal. So what we're now going to move towards is action on your part. We know what the delegation cycle looks like. You've taken a look at kind of task and priorities from the Eisenhower matrix, and we know the importance of knowing our people. Now let's talk about how are we going to go about sharing the load. So in your workbook on page 27, you're going to see these 4 circles, and they're breaking the task out in this way. It's saying there are some tasks that it's work that I must do. Another could be work that I can do but others can help, or it's work that you give someone else that you can help, or it's something that others can do. And I think this is a trap that we fall into oftentimes. And that is, again, we think it's an all or none. But it doesn't have to be that way. Yes, some things only you can do. Do it. But if it's something that you can own but someone can do a part of it, great. If it's something that you give out to someone and then you stay connected, wonderful. If they're great at doing, they can handle it, then let them. So it's important to kind of understand, how do I go about sharing that load? So I want you, as I mentioned, to go back to the Eisenhower matrix, which is on page 12. And I want you to think about where you spend most of your time, and then complete on page 28 in your workbook, list some of those tasks that you're accountable for. And then it shows you, it says, who's accountable for it, to whom might you delegate it, what's the priority, because that's important. And then the last column is the ABCD. That's going back to page 27. Is this something I can only do? Is this something I do when someone helps me? You kind of know where we were. So that's on page 27. So I'm going to give you roughly 7 minutes, and I'll put the timer up. So 7 minutes, go back to page 12, look at your task. Look at where you have things, maybe stuff that you said you had to do, right? It was in the first quadrant, do first. Or you had some things that were delegated. I want you now to use this matrix to better figure out how those tasks could be distributed. All right, so I'm going to go on and put the timer back up. And as I said, I'll give you roughly 7 minutes to kind of work on that, okay? So what I would like for you all to do is I really would like to hear from a couple of you just about your experience with this whole delegation piece. So if you wouldn't mind just coming off of mute, come on video, and just kind of share with the rest of us, like, what was an aha or new insight you got just from going through this whole delegation segment. So love to hear from you. Who would like to to share? And I can always get volunteers, so I'd love for people to volunteer, but I can volunteer you if you would like. But who would like? Okay, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it.
So I had about 6 things down in my urgent to-do list, and I've managed to make 2 of that just for me, you know, because I can't get anyone else to do that. That's got to be me. 2, however, I need to do with someone else. You know, it involves someone else. And 2, they can do more and I can help. So
wonderful! Yay! All right, you made my day just to realize that, right? So that's wonderful, and you highlighted this whole idea that I was trying to share, that oftentimes we think it's an all or none, right? And in fact, you know, there are times that we can kind of parse it out. So Emily, I saw your hand up. So now you have to come on. You have to share, Emily. I saw you pop up. Any insights that you found as well. So Emily, will you come back on? I saw your hand raised. There you are.
Yeah, so I had several tasks that were listed as, you know, things that I need to do, but I realized of those I actually need 2 of them I need to do by myself, and then one that I thought, you know, was very urgent, I actually reprioritized it to another category on the Eisenhower matrix, and I realized for the rest of the tasks I can actually get someone to help me. So it looks like I'm actually not as overwhelmed as I thought, which is great.
Wonderful, wonderful. See, this is how we build that resiliency, right? This is how we build a resiliency. We prioritize, we delegate, we share the load, and recognize that in many cases you're helping someone else to develop by doing that. All right, I need at least one more. Who else was able to get some insights and value out of that activity? So who else would like to voluntarily come on? Okay, thank you, Christina. Let's see if we could see you on video. That would be lovely. Christina, you there? You're on mute.
Okay. Okay. Well, I feel that I need to work on the tasks and the skills, you know, and how I can match them.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I was like, it's easier, you know, if you do, all by yourself, but in the long term, in the long run, yeah, it can, lead to, burnout. So I think at the moment, I'm kind of selecting, collaborators and volunteers for non-profit organizations. So I need to, select, which are, the most urgent tasks and what skills
Mhm.
I need to, identify, and some potential collaborators, to complete these tasks.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what's going to help you also with that, because what I'm hearing is a lot of matching the skills with the task. I think it would be really good if you went back to the worksheet on, the second quadrant about the others, getting to know your team, figure out who wants to do things and who's skilled to do it. And that will help you out a great deal. So great, wonderful, wonderful. I'm
Thank
glad
you.
to see that. All right, Swati, I see you. You can come on video if you can. Love to hear your story.
Yeah, hi. What I learned from this entire exercise is sometimes we tend to get overwhelmed by the amount of work that we keep on thinking and ruminating that, okay, I have to do this, and that is one of the reasons that leads to, at least for me, I tend to procrastinate things
Yeah.
just because I get overwhelmed by the amount of work I need to do. So by using this Eisenhower matrix technique, now I can just channelize it properly. I can just put it in different uh, what do you say parts of it, and I can just get work done. So I
Yes.
just really benefit from that. Thank you.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. I'm actually seeing, I think the screen is getting brighter just because you guys are going to be burning brighter so much better with sharing the load. So thank you for all of you that that shared that. I really did appreciate that. So this just final point on reflection on delegation. Here, just kind of some 4 tips to keep in mind. Know your limits, right? Take control, guide and empower, and be willing to allow yourself, not to focus just on kind of just right now, right? Because we'll get into that. I have to do it first, and it may not, one of you mentioned, I realize it's really not a high priority. So when you prioritize, so I invite you to use all the tools that I've given. Again, those worksheets that I've mentioned that I said were kind of your gifts for homework, please go back through those and take the time. And I think you'll definitely get a lot out of each one of those. All right, so we are on our final topic here, and this is about influential leadership. What I want to say when we think about influencing is that there are just a number of different paths to influencing. There's influencing that comes from power. It could be the position that you hold. It could be the intellectual capital or the information that you have, your expertise, or even kind of a reward punishment system. But then there's also the personal influence. This type of influence can be seen in a person's presence. They kind of come in, they've got this natural charisma, and they're just influential, right? And then there's also this degree of self-awareness and social awareness that yields personal power, as well as how skilled we are at utilizing our interpersonal skills. And influencing really is about utilizing those interpersonal skills. So, excuse me, what you see here on the screen, and this is also in your workbook, this is CCL's influence model. And what makes this model unique is that it shows that the process of influence begins long before you have to actually influence someone, okay, or something. Foundationally, it's based first on self-awareness, and I've been talking a lot about that throughout the entirety of our time. And it's also based on a degree of trust that you've built with those that you're seeking to influence. And so when this foundation is not there, I'm going to tell you, using the tactics that I'm about to share with you, they're going to feel more like manipulation than really someone, excuse me, someone that's really trying to kind of, if you will, go back to share the load. We're in this together. So it's really important that you build that solid foundation. That's critical. So added to that foundation, you'll see there's some specific tactics that you're going to deploy depending upon the preferences of the person that you're influencing. And once you've developed that rapport, then you can utilize this relationship to influence others. And that's when it's saying propel forward. Hey, you've built this trust, you understand how to work really well with this person. Leverage that relationship to be, someone, if you need someone to champion another initiative or other efforts that you might be working on. So I want to introduce you to these 3 tactics. The tactics are head, heart, and hands. So head, this is appealing to a person's rational side, their intellect, and it's usually done by using data, numbers, facts, figures. Then there is the heart person. This is where you're tapping into maybe a person's emotions, their own personal goals, their values, their sense of purpose, if you will. And then the last tactic is hands. And this is where you find ways to collaborate with others. And I like to think about hands as an exchange, okay? And so it's like, I give you this, you give me that. So it's reciprocity in a way. So before I go any further, I want, based on that just very brief description that I've given you, I want you to put a check mark on the one you think you are. Because as I said, self-awareness is so important, and I'm going to tell you why here in a second. But put a check mark on the screen. Again, view options, annotate, stamp. Tell me, which one do you think you are? Do you tend to operate out of head, heart, and hands? And as you're doing that, I'm going to tell you a story. Again, I want you to keep putting it up there, but I'm going to tell you this story of how this has worked in different ways for me. Or didn't work, I should say. So my sister, I'm going to tell you, is a heart person. I feel like I'm kind of head and heart, but I probably lean more on the head part. But my sister is 100% heart. And one of her girlfriends, thank God for this, has overcome breast cancer. And she's a part of a group of breast cancer survivors. And they started raising money for this organization. And so my sister came to me with a heart appeal. Shelley, Vanessa is raising money for an organization. Can you donate some money? Well, being kind of the head person that I am, and in addition to that, quite a few years back, I had been doing a lot of research on breast cancer and cure for breast cancer, and uncovered that there were so many organizations out there that really were under the underbelly, were pharmaceutical companies looking for money to further their research for medicine or prescription or drugs, but not a cure. So I became really focused in on wanting to support organizations that want a cure. If we can send a man to the moon, we can get this breast cancer thing done, right? So there's a whole industry around breast cancer. And I could see why organizations don't want a cure, because, oh my God, think of all the things that would end, businesses that would go out of business because we have a cure. So I became really focused on that. So her coming to me and saying, hey, Shelley, will you donate some money to Vanessa, her breast cancer organization, and she didn't give me any information about what the money's used for, anything like that. Well, needless to say, that didn't go very well. And I started asking all these questions, which she didn't have any answers to. And, so she was not able to influence me. Certainly, she went back and got some answers, but still they weren't sufficient for me. But I'm seeing on the screen, some of you have pointed out that, yeah, I'm a head person, I'm a heart person, I'm a hand person. So it's important that you know that. And that's because I want to introduce you to a rule that many of you, is a version of, some of you have probably heard of the golden rule. So the golden rule is, we know this as, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the principle behind the golden rule is solid. Like, you wouldn't want to do something to someone else, if you wouldn't want that done to you. But the platinum rule takes the golden rule to the next level. So it's not just about kind of principle, it's about I'm going to interact with you in the way in which you prefer. So the example here is if I'm a head person and I'm going to say I found out that, let's see, I don't know if I can see some of the names here. I can't see on the screen. I'm going to pretend that Wendy is a heart person. And I, again, like my sister, I approach her from the head because it's going to fall flat. So it's important to know your preference. And the reason for that is because that's the way we tend to influence. That's the way we interact with people. That's how we communicate with people. So we have to learn to really kind of practice this platinum rule where we're really getting at a place where we're interacting with people on the level or in the way in which is best suited for them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask Ashley to put you into a breakout. And this is actually your last breakout for the day. And Ashley, we're going to give them just about 12 minutes, let's say 12 minutes. And so what I want you to do in your breakout room is think about a current situation where you have to influence someone and think about which tactic do you think would work best. So you don't have a lot of time. There's probably 3 of you in a room, 12 minutes. That's not a lot of time. So please manage your time. You have about 4 minutes. Maybe give a really, really short synopsis of what the situation is, which tactic you think, and maybe, and why you think that. And then you guys can give each other some input, okay? So maybe 1 minute to talk about maybe the situation, what you think, and then let your colleagues in the breakouts help with figuring out what you should do, okay? So with that, Rachel, if you would put them in the breakout for 12 minutes, that would be great. I would love to hear from maybe just a couple of you. I see we still have some coming back in. Awesome. Wonderful. I think we have everyone now. Okay, first of all, someone asked about the timer from YouTube. I've put it in the chat for you. But as some of you are coming in, there was smiling and laughter. You know, I'd like to know what was maybe something that you really got out of that session that was a gift to you. So I'd love to hear what was a gift maybe that you got, some insights that you got from someone in the group.
Hello?
Yes, please, Swati.
Yeah, Swati. Yeah. It was the entire experience of the session till now, right from the first breakout till the last one. It was like going from one step to the next and growing as a part of it. So thoroughly enjoyed the session. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Kelly.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. And you're stealing my clothes. Because that was the intent, to build that. We start out with burning bright and we end with burning bright, but now we have some actual things we can do to get the job done. So I really appreciate you sharing that. One other, yes, Georgina, did you want to add?
Yes, in my group, one of us, what we did was that we gave a scenario. It was a touching scenario, but my team members, those in my group, they seem to be hard people. But as we discussed how the whole situation unfolded, because in reality, they realized that there is a need for them to also have the heart approach, because you can't always touch the emotions of people. You will also need to have the head approach and then the hand as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And you bring up a really great point, Georgina, and that is especially when you're trying to influence a group. Because if you imagine, if you're influencing a group, you're going to have someone there that's head, heart, and hands. So how do you deal with that? Well, as you're presenting your case or what it is you're trying to influence the group on, You just make sure you have something that appeals to the various ways, right? That you've got data to support what you're saying, but you're driving the mission and the purpose. And maybe you talk about what's in it for them. So that's a way of really kind of touching all three of those, especially when you're dealing with a group. So really do appreciate you lifting that out for me. So what I kind of want to leave with you is yet another tool. I have a bunch of gifts that I've given you all. So here's yet the last gift, and this is the gift of an influence self-assessment. And it just helps you, again, as you're trying to hone your skills or you're trying to develop these skills around influencing. Take the assessment. It won't take very long. It is 2 pages, but what it does is it'll help you to see the areas that you should work on, the areas of development. And then, you know, make a plan, put a plan in place. Maybe find someone to hold you accountable for whatever it is, that section within influence that you want to work on more than others, okay? So as I said, another homework. You're like, Shelly, I came to this workshop and all she did was give me homework. And that's true. I left you with tools and gifts so that the learning continues. It's not just a 3-hour session. I'm hoping that this is really going to help to make some minor adjustments that can really provide you with some long-term differentials in how you show up, how you can burn bright, how you can absolutely be your best self. So that really was the intent of the session, and Georgina was trying to steal my thunder, but talking and Swati in terms of talking about how the session built. So the way I want to close this out is 2 ways. First of all, I'm going to ask Ashley, go on and put the link in the chat if you wouldn't mind. There is an evaluation that we would like for you to fill out. I see feedback as a gift. And so we want to know, hey, what worked well? You know, put in your comments, what would you like different, so that we are sure to meet your needs in future conference sessions. So please do that. The other thing that I want to do is I want you, as it says there, you can put in the chat, or even better, and I'm going to take the screen down here in a second, so you can do chat, or just come on video. Let us see you, let us hear you. And what is one key takeaway, or I'm going to say one aha, you know, big aha that you got out of the session for you, okay? So I'm going to stop sharing and just ask you all again, you can put some in the chat. I'll watch the chat. Please make sure that you click on the eval. As a matter of fact, let me just give you a couple of minutes first. So work on the eval, 1. Click on that, answer that. That'll take just a couple of minutes. Once you finish that, I'd like for you to put in the chat one key takeaway from the session, okay? So if you wouldn't mind doing those 2 things for me in that order, I would really appreciate it. Georgina, I see your comment. I really appreciate that. Taking breaks, no matter how short, that's so key. So other insights, I'd appreciate it. And thank you all for the comments, the beautiful things. I hear you, the great, the breakouts, connecting, the 4 MIMs. It looks, or I guess the 4 minutes. I'm not sure, Sarah, if you want to elaborate on that last point.
Yeah, no, it was about taking those just 4 minutes to breathe and relax, you know, that and just doing it, because you never do, and it's only 4 minutes.
Exactly 4 minutes. Who doesn't have 4 minutes, right? Helps you to burn bright. I like this. Wendy said that you like to work in teams, and it really helped to realize that one can delegate but still work with the person on it. Absolutely. C said informative session. Michelle now has a framework to follow. Christina said cultivating self-awareness and being flexible. let's see, it looks like Mary added, even in retirement, I can feel that I can apply so many of these concepts. Women need to encourage one another to practice these skills. Yes. Swati, love this session, and you're going to apply those key points to your life. So I really appreciate that. I'd love to see more if you would. Agreed, Mary. I'm sharing these in with my retired mother. Miriam said we'll be applying some of these at work with my team. And Miriam, I'm so glad that you said that, because you're right. I wanted you to get these nuggets for yourself first and foremost. But I also want you to take these back to your organization, take them back to your teams, okay? So that you all can be very effective. Well, I will say thank you for being so engaged in this session. And I do hope that you enjoy the rest of the session. We do invite you to visit the exhibitors on the virtual platform. So absolutely do that. And I'll turn it back over to Rachel or Shireen if you want to say some goodbyes. But again, I appreciate you all being here, and I appreciate being invited to come and share on a topic that I am very passionate about. So Shireen, Rachel, over to you.
Rachel, go ahead.
Well, just thank you everyone so much for sticking through. I know 3 hours can be a lot of time in a busy week, and I hope that you feel this investment of your time actually gets you time back and actually energizes you. And so I'm just really grateful for all of you for coming today. CUGH has a lot more conference sessions going on, so you can check out their conference website to see what else is going on and how you might want to engage. And then, as I put in the chat, Women Lift has other ways that we engage folks. We hold a number of workshops throughout the year that we call power-ups. You can follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter as well to see what's going on with us. We're at Women Lift Health. And if you're interested in engaging in 3-hour-long sessions that are very reflective and active and engaging, that have a lot of small group breakouts, and if you fit the criteria that we have, you could apply to join our fully funded leadership journey for next year or for the future. They will be held if you live and work in either India, Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, or the United States, and we will be expanding soon to Nigeria. I know that's not every place that all of you are, and so I feel your pain if it doesn't work, but perhaps you know someone great who does, and then she can feed you all the great information. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Shelley, for a fabulous session. We're so glad to have you. I love this content, and all the smiles and the energy and the positivity, right? That's the uplifting part. That's the part that helps us burn bright. And just knowing that there's this group of women here who are feeling recharged, hopefully, in certain ways, we can take some actions. It's really great. So yeah, you've got 2 minutes of time confetti before 3 o'clock. So thanks, everyone. And yes, there will be a session recording through the CUGH conference website. I'm not sure exactly when they're putting it up, but it will be there.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank
Rachel,
you.
this is Becky.
Oh, hey, Becky.
Thank you for your message as well. I enjoyed the session. I was sort of in and out, but yes, I got a lot still.
Great.
And Shireen, to your question about the chat, I believe CUGH's tech support has all control of the recordings, including the chat transcript. So that would be a question for Kev. Kev, are you on the line?
I was just wondering if we could get the chat transcript. There were just so many wonderful comments, especially towards the end. Okay, thanks, Kev. We'll contact the CUGH for transcript. We are co-hosts, technically. I was wondering if we could.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just went in. I was trying to actually, I did save the chat and I'm just trying to see if I can copy it.
Yeah, I think I have it. I have it.
Okay,
Great.
good.
Perfect.
Okay,
Awesome. Thanks.
we're good to go.
Okay. Well, Shelley, thank you so much. That was fantastic. And I think it's very, very well received. Rachel, thank you for everything you did to make this happen. It was great. And now I look forward to the feedback and the next one that we do. You must be exhausted.
Yes,
Shelley.
thank you both. And thank you, Ashley, behind the
Yes,
scenes, pulling and pulling. Oh my gosh, you know,
Always.
that's so important. It can make or break a session. So thank you, Ashley, so much.
No, thank you, Shelley. That was so seamless. It's always incredibly easy working with you.
Yeah, you were so organized, Shelley. You just had like
warms
everything
my
like
heart.
mapped out, and it's just that makes a huge, huge difference. And you pay attention to detail, which is wonderful.
I try to do my best. I try to do my best.
You make it seem so easy.
Well, I love what I do, so that counts for something. And I certainly love working with you ladies. I look forward to seeing you guys in person in May.
I know, can't wait.
Yeah, so that'll be good. We'll get some good hugs, okay?
Yes.
Looking
forward to it.
I'm a hugger. You're a hugger.
I'm a hugger. I'm a
Right.
hugger. Yes, we can have daily hugs.
Definitely a hugger.
Consider it done.
All right. All right, you guys.
Thank you all.
All right,
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.